Hi, Sarit.
Hey, hi Saurabh. So good to see
Welcome to
you.
the Yellow Couch. Yeah, thanks. Same. Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
It's the virtual Yellow Couch. Since you're in California and I'm in Mumbai, you've taken the time out after a long day to, talk to me at the Yellow Couch. I'm really thankful. I really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And I'm really looking forward to this talk.
I wanted to start by talking a little bit about your background. The way I look at it, Sarit to me is somebody who was one of my earliest mentors in design, somebody who went to the same design school as I did, started off in the same company as our first design job. And, you've spent close to 25 years in the user experience field. I think it'd be safe to say that you're probably one of the first five UX designers of India. I can probably say that safely because when you got into user experience design, most people hadn't even heard of the field. So you're one of the pioneers. You've worked at Yahoo, at Oracle, at Human Factors. I'm sure that the amount of design experience and learning you've gathered over the years is enough to fill 10 books. So that is exactly what I'm hoping to tap into today in the short time I have with you. The one thing that always stood out to me said it was that, whenever you would have to communicate something, right, you wouldn't just say something ordinarily. You would add your own wit and, trademark pun to it. And so for me, that is the kind of the Sarit X factor that you bring to everything. And I think if puns are a metaphor for how you constantly try to break out of the box, whether it's with language or with experiences, then I think I've definitely learned a lot from you. And so thank you so much for, giving us your time and being part of this today.
Thank you so
Um,
much for your kind words. It feels overwhelming to hear this, but it feels like I'm still new to this field and learning so much
wow.
because so much is there to still learn, right? And but talking about puns, I think being a Punjabi, I think it's a default trait.
Yeah. So I rest my case. Yes. A big part of your design journey was in India, and then you moved to the States. And so I guess I want to kick off by asking you, what has been the difference in designing based out of two different geographies, like some of the big picture differences that you've experienced?
I think design journey really started in the design school, but I think if you talk about UX design per se, in Human Factors International, we were doing consulting, right? In consulting, these were quick turnaround projects where you would go understand a certain context. The field was also new, and we would come with a certain bit of authority. We would have a process, and we would have these amazing decks that we will show to say, hey, we've got this process, and you need to listen to us. We will maybe start with understanding stakeholder needs and user needs, and we'll design some things, and then we'll throw it over the wall and collect our check, and then off to the next project, right? So I think it was also the type of projects we were doing and in India, but that is how many of the other projects started. But something interesting happened during the 2008 2009 time. Was coinciding with the downturn in the economy. That's when the iPhone took off. When the smartphones became ubiquitous and in the hands of consumers, suddenly the demand to make applications became more uh, important and a lot more important. It was not just the bankers and the insurance agents or someone who was in the back office using applications, right? Now people were looking for, say, restaurant reservations or guidance on maps. I think that's what changed. And suddenly product companies started sort of looking at UX designers who are going to be involved in the journey from the very start. especially looking at how the constraints of technology, constraint of business needs to be understood, and the teams need to inculcate that knowledge in an in-depth way.
So you're saying the app ecosystem was the trigger for the whole UX design revolution?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because what it did was that because suddenly consumers were demanding this, and the same back office people would be going back home and they were using these amazing apps, they also started demanding more from business applications too.
Wow.
What I saw, I think, in my UX journey in India was also the growth of UX from a very consulting practice to very product thinking practice, right? So at the same time, what was happening was, because I think I was changing my career, because at one point in time I realized that, you know, this learning that was happening in a product company was a bit different than a consulting company, because I think it was a blast, so much fun, right? The amount of travel that we used to do. But I realized that I needed to kind of fill that gap as well. That's when I made a shift to Yahoo. But in Yahoo India as well, while we were working on products, I think the big change that I was looking at was that there was still a bit of a consulting mindset, where half the time you would go pitch off projects and then you are doing it, but you are not really getting into the nitty gritties of that pixel level detail. Of course, later on, I think Yahoo was one of the forefront in terms of doing the product design mindset, but it was still early days, right? And when I moved to the US, I think the big difference that I saw was the amount of maturity that was there in product organizations, where engineers, product managers, they understood the role of a designer and how they would work together to kind of make sure that the product that is shipping is considering all those constraints, right? And that's why the kind of end result we were getting was different. And at the same time, this whole agile revolution was happening, right? Earlier on, you could take a lot of time and design everything out, and then people can take years to ship a product out. But here, you had to kind of ship one meaningful iteration out and then keep on building it out, right? That required a different mindset too.
Tell me about this word you use, right? Difference in maturity. For people who don't work in this space or who haven't seen the difference across geographies, how would you explain that? Like when you say there was a difference in maturity, what do you mean?
Uh, I think it's a really good question. So let me give an example, right? Like, let's say there is a early stage product meeting that is happening, and I'll give you two scenarios, and this is what will show where a organization is mature and where organization is still starting to understand how to leverage design in a meaningful way in an agile environment, right? What happens in a mature organization? A new project gets started. There is an initiative from the top to say, hey, we need to capture this new market. This is a new AI product that you're trying to do something to do with mail, so that it can look at your mailbox and start giving you smart reminders to say, hey, you have this coupon, it's about to expire, and you may want to leverage that, right? Something like that. What, I'm just making that up, right? When the project is starting, every single person is thinking about who's the user, how are you going to solve it, while the engineer is thinking about what constraint exists, what large language models they're going to be using. At the same time, those constraints are being heard by the designer. At the same time, the product manager is thinking about what the business need is, where you're going to go. And when you come up with the first level of designs, no one is restricting to say, hey, we cannot do this, right? Everyone is comfortable with, when you are pushing an aspiration vision, they are
Wow.
able to easily differentiate between the what and the how and the when. And in
Hmm.
a organization which is not as mature, they jump to the how and the when before even a what has been defined.
That's amazing. That's really well said.
And that shows up everywhere, right? Because you've not defined your north star, where you're headed, and you've jumped on to the first how. And then architecturally, you can start seeing that the navigation looks all over the place. Some of the banking sites, I think you must have seen, right? It's like so hard to find. It is hard to figure out where you came from, where you are headed, because even if you're iteratively making something, the decisions had not clearly defined the what first, right?
Wow. Hmm.
So being comfortable with the aspirational vision across the stakeholders and aspiring to do something which is, hey, let's, this is where we are headed, and then meaningfully selecting what, the how and the when, that hey, this is our going to be the first milestone and this is what we're going to ship, but then we'll continually keep on adding to it so that we are moving towards that. That requires a certain amount of discipline and amount of ruthless prioritization. In fact, we used to have mugs in Yahoo which used to say, hey, do prioritization until it hurts. I remember still one meeting where we were doing this prioritization exercise. And usually, in a big product org, when the prioritization would happen, a lot of people will come up with their initiatives, and there would be a laundry list of initiatives that we had to kind of come through. And at some point in time, we'll go down the list, prioritize everything, and then draw a line saying that, hey, for next quarter, we're going to do this, right? But this one leader that we had, he said, I know each of you have done a lot of thinking. And by the way, design used to be involved in informing that prioritization list, right? But what he, and I think he changed my mindset a lot. He said, I know all the product leaders have done their job in prioritizing their own stuff. I trust you. Tell me, what are the things that you are not going to do? And the only conversation we had in that meeting was about that stuff that we should not be doing. And that clarified, because that's the biggest challenge in product organizations, that
Mm,
people think they're going to get done something in, say, X amount of time. It always takes more than that, right?
yeah.
So you have to ruthlessly prioritize. Anyways, I think this sort of gives an example of
Yeah.
a mature versus not so mature
No,
organization.
that's fantastic. So, Sarit, what you're saying is mature organizations spend the time and the rigor doing the visioning and the problem definition before they actually start putting pen to paper and start thinking about the how and the when.
Yeah. So I think, let me clarify, they don't wait for visioning to finish.
Okay.
The key part is that visioning is there and you continue to work on the
Uh,
vision. But at some point in time, when directionally the vision is defined, there's no analysis paralysis, right? You know that directionally you're headed. There are some parts that are not detailed out yet. It is okay. But you continue to define the vision. So the vision and the version tracks run parallelly, but you sort of stagger it out.
Vision and version. That's a really cool framework. You know, when you work in an organization like this, right, which has inherent maturity of how they look at the vision, how that gets translated into design, how do you get there? I mean, it's one thing to kind of have the privilege to work in an environment like this, but let's say you're in an environment which is not there yet, right? How do you get it to this point?
Yeah. No, I think that's an excellent question. So I've had a chance to see this movie maybe twice. One was at Yahoo, and now I'm seeing this in Oracle as well. So at Yahoo, I was at a very interesting time when Marissa Mayer
Yeah.
became the CEO. And in fact, she was moving talent. And as a part of that exercise, she had hired a person called Mel Gaiman, who came from Google. Very interesting guy. He actually used to be a captain in U.S. Navy. He used to run nuclear submarines, and then he became a product manager. And then
Interesting.
he hired me to head Yahoo Small Business. That was one transformation that I saw, where how Yahoo completely transformed into a very agile based organization, and how the emphasis to single pixel level design and how that maturity grew. That was one part of the cycle, right? And in Oracle, I'm seeing this process all over again, but this time at even a larger scale. But imagine, right? Oracle is a 40-year-old organization with products which are B2B. And I think it was very interesting, right? When you ask someone, when you think of Oracle, do you think of design or not, right? Like, I think you
Oh,
would hardly hear any people who would talk about Oracle as a leading design. But now Oracle is winning design system awards left, right, and center. And the transformation that is happening and how that is happening is because there is a very serious rigor that has been put in to earn credibility of vision as well as credibility of execution. Really simple stuff, right? Like, first, we have to dispassionately understand the user goals that we're trying to enable, with the nuance as well as with the context in which they are trying to achieve, whether it's a supply chain management product, whether it's a marketing product, whether it is a, say, ERP or cloud product. Because previously, I think Oracle products were great, right? However, they were very tech driven and very data driven, which was the right thing to do. But now, flipping this, focusing only on user goals and doing it in a way where you're able to influence the entire organization of 150,000 people, it's a huge undertaking. It's like a ship that you are navigating and it's slowly turning, right? And then you have to paint a extremely bold vision, because only if you aim for the moon you're going to reach a treetop, right? You have to paint a really
Mm.
bold vision. If you have to achieve those user goals, what kind of desired outcome you need, so that they are effective, they are differentiated, they are done it in a emotionally resonant way. And then you have to have a very strong design system that can enable it, right? Design system not just which is just about look and feel, but also because a design system is not a good design system unless it integrates with the vertical, with the tech stack.
Sure.
That you should be able to enable your AI ML, able to enable page types and not just the atomic components, enable all of it. Otherwise your data structures are not going to talk to each other, right? So that's the kind of exercise that is happening. And that's why one of the key differentiators in Oracle is that there's a huge engineering team that reports into design team, which is helping to build this design system, which has all these enablements, right? And then you have to kind of get into the credibility of execution part, because you have to identify and execute that next achievable step, which we can take towards this bold vision that will help us learn and iterate. And then you can use that to help measure the approach and keep on track, and then keep on showing the substantive progress to stakeholders. Initially you'll have to show one pocket of success, and when people see that, oh, wow, that team did that, I want to do the same thing, because they see that success, right? And then success breeds success. And that's how it's happening in Oracle. And the same stuff was happening in Yahoo as well. One of the first exercise I remember, which was given to me by the SVP at Yahoo at the time, and I was leading ads and data team at the time, and I was in India, and he was looking for key design leaders who will help paint the vision for the whole B2B ad products. And he asked me to lead that vision, and then we created this amazing vision on what that could be. And there was this parallel project happening on the B2C media product side, so that project was headed by someone else, but then that helps us sort of lead us there. So I think this whole thing about earning credibility of vision and earning credibility of execution, and then keep on repeating that, and making sure that the teams are on track to do that. But it
Vision
is
and
a
execution. Mm.
Yep.
So, Sarit, speaking of vision, right, and the fact that it's a shared vision across design, engineering, product management, business, I'm sure even in the most mature organization, there are different priorities. How do you handle these differences and debates, in large organizations where each of these teams is large, each of them has a big enough footprint? How do you keep them all aligned to the same thing?
Let me at outset say it's not always easy, right? You have to also pick your battles, that where you could sort of make an impact versus where you could not, right? Because we have limited bandwidth where you can focus your energy, right? But I think it really starts with identifying what is the biggest initiative for the organization that you're in those initiatives, who are the key stakeholders involved. First thing, I've always seen that there are people in the organization who are curious. I look for curious people, understand where they are coming from. I can tell you one thing: everyone has right intentions, because they want the product to be successful. They want to do the right thing from their users' perspective. I think it's really important to build those bridges, right? I think that's what every single new team that I've been getting into, I think making those connections is really important, especially with the product and engineering counterparts. And once you have done that, I think then the other part is to understand how can you make them successful. Like for example, as soon as I joined Oracle, there was a big project happening. There was a product that we had called Infinity, and it's basically, it was something similar to Google Analytics. It was doing a lot of these real time behavioral behavioral analytics, where just by looking at users' behavior, you can predict and you can do the personalization of the users based on what they've done across different touch points and channels. The redesign was already underway, so train has left the station. So this was the version part of the track, and I said, absolutely, we'll help you get that going. We didn't stop that train. I said, what if you can help me, and where we also draw a second set of pictures which we'll call the vision track. And don't worry, we'll do this on our time, but I want your participation to help us understand, because that will also help me learn. I think another thing that I've realized is that many times as designers we feel that we can help redesign anything, right? Because we'll come with these best practices and
Yeah.
heuristics and some knowledge about the work that you've done in the past. But many times we don't realize is that these vertical knowledge that exists in a product organization has been years in the making. Until and unless you can have that conversation with the key stakeholders, we won't earn that credibility. So you have to invest that time to understand the technology stack. You have to invest the time to understand the business needs, who are the users, the kind of the nuances and the nitty gritties that are involved, right? Going back to that project, right? So while I was learning all about that, as a part of the vision, we said, don't worry about it. We are not going to execute the vision. This is just to help us paint a bold picture, and I need your participation. And we did what we call as rapid design labs. It was similar to like a design sprint, but I think just making sure that they are contributing, bringing their use cases, and all the use cases that they had heard from customers, bringing some of the customers in. We started painting that picture. Before we knew, that story became so compelling, the group vice president started taking that and started sharing with the analysts, started sharing with the others. At the same time, the engineers started seeing it. They said, hey, this is so cool, why aren't we building this, right? So
So the
slowly and
vision and the
slowly
version track started merging.
they started merging together, and I have
Wow.
seen that over and over again. And the other part is, at some point in time, when the product team was sharing that, or when the engineering team was talking about it, it became their idea.
That's the most important thing. Yeah.
That's the most important, because I think it's not about where the idea is coming from. It is
Mm.
more about, like, I think there was a very important saying that plan is nothing but planning is everything. Now this vision had the participation of all the other stakeholders. It was devoid of the question of the when and the how. It was more focused on the what, while we were building the when and the how based on the first iteration. So that's why they also became very enthusiastic about, what if you can do this, because you have separated the when and the how question in this track, right? And more ideas were coming from them as well. Hey, what if you do this, and what if this, some of these opportunities show up. And this is much before the whole AI/ML and Gen AI stuff, right? So yeah, it started merging. So I think that is happening over and over again. And now I think everyone who talks to me in the organization, they know that Sarit is going to come and he'll talk about the vision of the version. And everyone is, and the same thing happened in other project. And I think you never know when the idea will happen, right? Last year we worked on a project, we painted such a bold picture, worked with the engineering and the product team, but it never got prioritized. In the last 2 months we have been just dusting that off, and everyone is just looking at the same thing, and now we are sort of improving upon it, and it's running the show.
So it's kind of like a way to nudge people towards following that bigger, bolder vision rather than pushing people into it, right? Because that never works. I
It
mean,
never worked.
yeah, it never works. And because people then become defensive, they take up strong positions and they feel attacked. And I think this way of kind of saying, okay, we're on the train that you're on, we'll help you, but here's another parallel track, and both these things will run together. And knowing that doing this will ultimately allow these two to kind of seamlessly merge is I think, just brilliant. Making an impact as a designer is understanding change management. And I think
Right,
what you've
right.
just illustrated is a strategy for that, right? How do you nudge people towards better outcomes rather than force them into it? Get their ownership, get their buy-in.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
And the interesting thing with this approach is that even when you're doing the version, right? Like, say, suppose this is like a quick thing that you have to do. Even in that, clearly articulating the user goal and not jumping to the solution. I think the amount of time that we spend in articulating the user goal is a lot, right? Just as a user, I want to accomplish this so that I can do something, right?
So tell me, Sarit, sorry to butt in, if if you take like 100% of what it takes to do a design solution, how much time of that 100 would you spend defining the problem?
Let's say that 60 to 70% of the time goes into defining the problem.
Wow, that itself is such an amazing epiphany, right?
But it has taken a lot of cycles for us to get there. Earlier on, what would happen is that, say, a product manager comes with a request. There were scenarios where they used to happen that they would have done a balsamic sketch by themselves and they'll say, hey, just kind of get this going. And then we would ask, hey, what problem are you trying to solve? And then articulate around that. And then we'll do a quick mock up. And then before we know it goes into the sprint. And by the time it comes out, like it does not connect. But then
Oh,
when
so
you,
you're saying even the problem definition process is iterative. That's not a one
yes,
shot thing.
it's not a one shot thing. Like, and now we, even if a request comes in, hey, let's figure this out. Who is the user, right? What are the user goals? What are their sub goals? What's the shape of data that you're looking at, right? How many of these attributes would be there? How many times that user would do this, right? How often would they visit this page? That shape of data then informs so many things, right? We will not start drawing until we have written scenarios in pure English, because even getting that agreement in just simple English makes our job easier, because the amount of iterations we've seen, that as soon as you put a picture or a flow together, and you must have seen as a part of the consulting process too, right? That everyone will have an input. Hey, what if this changes?
Yeah,
What if that changes?
yeah,
What if this can happen, right? And then
yeah.
those
Yeah.
iterations keep on happening, and we are actually strategizing our approach on the mock-ups rather than what has been earlier agreed to. So I think that process really makes it clear to everybody that this is the approach we are looking at. Everyone sees the same picture, even in words, before we start drawing things out. It does
Mm.
not mean it needs to be very long. I think we have a time bound process to do that.
Sure,
But that
it's
really,
time bound. Yeah.
yeah, but that really helps to make sure that we derive the design goals from the user goals, and everyone speaks the same language.
The key insight for me from this, Sarit, is that most people think that the iterative part of any design process is just this interface design part of it. But the more important aspect that needs to be iterated is the problem definition part of it, right? To
Absolutely.
achieve that level of clarity requires that iterative process to be also used in the beginning to
Absolutely.
define your what. And I think that for me is such an epiphany because I honestly never thought about it like that. I just thought that problem definitions are a one shot thing. You do it once, you get it right, and then you just iterate the hell out of the design phase. But you've kind of reversed it for me. That's
It's
amazing.
actually a lot of fun. There was one feature that we were designing, I think maybe it was 3 years back, where the PM came to us and they say, hey, they need these two screens, right? They had already defined what those screens would be. We had a pattern for that. The designer on my team, they said, hey, this small requirement has come in. So we went through this process. As a part of this process, and this was an engaged process with the PM, the conclusion that came out was that we actually didn't have to build the feature.
Wow. Best outcome.
Exactly. And I think that was the happiest outcome for me, because I think it showed that sometimes you don't need to build things.
Sometimes the best screen is no screen.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's outstanding. So do you guys have a name for your process at Oracle? Do you have like your own kind of framework or
So I think at Oracle, we have a design system called Redwood. This whole process of thinking through this whole problem definition, user goals, design goals, shape of data, I think there's not a name for it, but definitely it's a Redwood design process that we call it, right? And I think a lot of that is influenced by the SVP that we have, Hillel Cooperman. Amazing, brilliant, brilliant design leader. He used to be at Microsoft. He's the one who helped design Windows 10. And I think just it's amazing to learn from him and the other mentors like my current manager, Marika, as well as Sandeep. I think many of these, right? I think, and of course, these are the mentors here, but I think they have been amazing mentors at previous companies too, who have helped inform this journey, right? In HFI, Apala, Eric, Phil,
Yeah.
Catstrop, so many of those, right? Which I think you've also interfaced with
Yeah.
them.
Jerome. Yeah.
Jerome, yep.
So, and one of the things I've noticed in all of these design leaders, Sarit, and I'm sure you've noticed it too, is that they have, the ability to influence on following a certain path or taking a certain approach. I'm sure there have been situations where you've had to exercise influence to, you know, convince a group of people to do a certain thing. So tell me a little bit about uh, how you use influence as a design leader.
Yeah, I think that actually is a really important question because many times you are influencing those team members who are not part of your team, right? It's easy to
Most of the
influence,
times, actually,
yeah,
those are the
most of the
ones you
time,
need to influence. Yeah,
right? And as a design leader, the only way you can make an impact is that when you're growing your circle of influence, right? And your circle of influence can include maybe the team that you're in, the design team that reports into you, the cross-functional team which is there in your vertical. Like say, suppose you are leading one area and you are influencing them. Then another circle of influences where you're not just influencing the vertical team that you're in, but you're influencing across teams. Another wider circle of influences where you're also impacting other organization and you're a thought leader, right? I think each of this uh, involves a way where as a design leader you have to look at what is that you're trying to accomplish, right? And some people optimize on influencing outside of the organization, but maybe I'll talk about more about inside the organization because I think
sure.
that's more of the direct takeaway,
Yeah.
right? I think the key thing, in my opinion, it comes from listening first. Until you listen and what where people are coming from, you cannot influence
Wow.
anyone because you can't make uh, people do things that they don't want to do. But if you know where people are coming from, what are their goals, how can you help them to be successful, and if you're inherently curious, then I think you have a way to influence them.
Listen first, influence later.
Yes. And the second part, I think, which also helps a lot is where people, when they realize that they don't have a control of their destiny, then people stop taking initiative and they will also not be open for influence or getting a direction as well, right? But when you are able to work with someone where you are inspiring them and they are having ownership, they are having accountability, and then you're trusting someone with something, and at the same time you are putting the effort to show that you believe in them, then they can do a lot more than what they think that they can do. This is without expecting something in return, right? And you could be, working with a product manager and helping them grow. At the same time, I think the same thing you are also learning from them, right? But you can only do that if you are first listening, focusing more on the why and accountability aspect of it, right? Because if you come from a fact that to say, hey, oh, I've created this vision, design owns the vision, you guys really need to listen to us because we've got so many years of experience, then you've just taken the accountability and trust.
Yeah. But Sarat, in a large organization, right, where the number of people and the number of stakeholders is quite big, isn't it exhausting to sit and have to listen to everybody, then craft a kind of persuasion strategy? After a while, I mean, you just have to deal with the fact that you have a certain amount of time and a certain goal to meet. I've often found that in large incumbents or organizations that I've gone in as a consultant, after a while it gets difficult to keep listening and because that process kind of sometimes never ends.
That unfortunately is true, but the fact of the matter is that how do you keep yourself engaged through this process is crucial, because uh, you have to realize that in large organizations the way decision making happens, it's very matrixed, right? And this is where I think listening helps. Then you know that who are the key influence makers related
Oh,
to a
okay.
specific decision.
Mm.
If you know who are the key decision makers, and I think one key rule of thumb that I have taken is that whenever there's a large meeting happening and you know who the key decision makers are, they should never be seeing something for the first time in a large meeting.
Uh,
If you have a point of view, or if you have a certain thing that you want to kind of push for, get those agreements earlier on. I think big rule of thumb: disagree in private but agree in public.
well,
I am a huge believer in rituals and cadence and regular sync ups, because there's a huge opportunity cost in large organizations where some ideas or some thought process that could be happening, and if you're not having those conversations where you don't have an agenda, right? Sometimes with cross functional stakeholders you need to have those regular sync ups. That's when they will, oh, oh, it reminds me, I was having a conversation with a customer, this issue came up, right? Or then that generates something for me to think about. I'll have another conversation, and then you keep on having those conversations. And when a big project is happening and you need to take decisions, you already have an established rapport with the cross-functional stakeholders and say, hey, we have something coming up, I would like to show you something. You show them, get their inputs, they've already participated in the process, and when a big meeting is happening, they're already on board with the decision, right? I think
smart.
embracing that decision making process and knowing
Mm.
that this is what it takes
Mm.
really helps to kind of make this process smoother. And then it takes away this, oh, you know what, this maybe too much of grunt work is happening,
Yeah.
because as a leader you also need to make sure that your team is able to succeed. And your team members may be individual contributors, and they are working so hard and they may not be doing this kind of work. So I think you have to create an environment where they are doing their best work.
I really like this idea around how you want to always, do kind of a pre-run with the senior stakeholder of a big reveal before you kind of announce it in public. And I think that's another really smart hack on how do you manage your stakeholders? How do you manage your energy when you have to spend so much time listening? And use that to navigate your way
Yeah, and I think do
through
it in a
through
very
getting.
transparent way,
Yeah.
because there's no that you're not hiding anything. You can say, hey, I have
Mm.
also shared with say stakeholder B, C,
Yeah.
and E, and I'd like to show you as well, and I like to get your inputs.
That's wonderful. Because, I'll tell you the design process that usually gets done in consulting, and you've been there, Sarit, is that you do the initial stakeholder visioning, right? Where you talk to all the key guys one on one. But then the reveal happens together. And what I've heard today from you actually is going to make me change that process.
Oh,
The
awesome.
visioning happens one on one, and the reveal also happens progressively until you kind of get the whole group together. I think there's a lot of merit in that. So I'm gonna do that. Sarath, you're gonna get the credit for it, of course.
Awesome. Because yeah, I think the key thing that I've seen is that, as a designer, I think I used to love the reveal part,
Yeah,
where we show this amazing prototype, which
correct.
you're showing the user journey and stuff is
And you're
happening
looking
and
for that
amazing stuff.
shock and awe, right? You're looking to
Talking about,
kind
yeah.
of do this in a big, kind of dramatic, room full of people kind of way. But you're telling me that that's not always a good thing.
Because what may happen is that one of the key stakeholders, who is the big decision making around it, right? They may have a totally different mental model of one part of the flow or one aspect of the strategy,
So it's too risky.
and it's too risky. And then what may happen is that they will feel disenfranchised, that I was not a part of this process. So this is where the making sure that we are trusting someone to know that they have a part in this decision making process, and taking their input first. And you can always call out, hey, you know what? We changed this flow. There is this new thing we have added because we got this input. I think that was a really good input, and you can see that it's already built in.
That's really smart. So, Sarat, I'm almost at the end because I know it's getting late for you. I just have two questions. One, in your design leadership journey across continents and across companies, what's kind of the one or two unexpected learnings that you can highlight for us? Things that were surprising to you. That's my first question. My second question is what we call, I always like to end the Yellow Couch episodes with this, is called the unpopular opinion, right? The one thing that you really believe in when it comes to design leadership, product management, from a design perspective, that everybody else usually disagrees with you on.
That's a really good one. I'll have to think about it. I think especially the second one, but the first one, I think one interesting learning that has happened just looking at, because at Yahoo I had various roles, right? I was leading ads and data organization at one point in time, then Yahoo small business, then the Yahoo membership team, and then last role that I had at Yahoo was I was leading all the products for the CTO organization, and got a flavor of looking at the internal culture in every single part of the organizations, right? And one key thing I realized was that the quality of product that we were shipping was not just dependent upon the quality of designers that we had.
Hmm.
Lot part was dependent upon the quality and the maturity of the engineering leadership team. I think once I figured that out, I have spent a lot of time building bridges with
Hmm.
the engineering leadership team, because
That's
see,
so true.
product, you
Yeah.
have to work with them one with the other, because product and design are tied at the hip, right? Each team may follow a certain sprint ritual, right? There may be a kickoff, and there is a grooming meeting, there could be a pre-grooming meeting, and then you're having demos or retros or whatever that you may call it, right? But at the end of the day, the design that you have shared, the person who's actually implementing is the engineer or a front end engineer who could have maybe, most of the life they were doing back end stuff, and then they just started doing front end, right?
Yeah.
Their sprint demo is coming on Monday, and if you don't have the relationship with the engineer, they're going to ship something, and then you will see something which is completely incongruent with what you designed. You have to create so much trust with the engineering team that as soon as they make something, even like at 10 o'clock in the night, they will feel that, hey, until and unless I get a approval from the designer, I'm not going to
Wow.
show it in a big demo meeting, right?
Yeah.
Small details like that. And how do you do that? Because you need to make sure that with the director of engineering and the VP of engineering, you've established that trust.
Hmm.
That is now inculcated as a part of the process. Everyone understand that this has to be done. There needs to be a design sign off that needs to happen. And at some point in time, everyone becomes so good at it. I don't need to spec out my design anymore, right? Like everyone is able to look at Figma and get the specs, and otherwise amount of time that we had to spend in correcting things post release used to be huge. So I would suggest that anyone who's looking to, say, even as a design leader or a designer, to look when they're looking for a change, when you are being interviewed, that you also interview your not just with the product team and the design team, but with the engineering team too. Apple has great design not just because they have great designers, because
Hmm.
of their engineering maturity as well, and same with Google as well. And
Really
I
well
think
said.
I can say the same at Oracle as well.
What you're saying, Sarit, is that a great design organization, often the design team tends to kind of get all the limelight for producing that excellent product experience. But what's really happening behind the scenes is this excellence of design and engineering put together that delivers that excellence, right? And
Yeah,
so we must not lose sight of that great products require great design when it meets great engineering.
absolutely, absolutely. Because look at small details, right? When you see greatness in design is happening because the engineering team is also putting the same amount of effort to kind of push the
Yeah,
boundary to make certain things happen. Like for example,
yeah.
I got my the Apple credit card was due for renewal. I got the new one, and you just had to open the packaging, and the packaging, as soon as it came in contact with the phone, It says, hey, do you want to just
Oh, wow.
activate your card? There was some RFID thing, right? These were not two separate organizations, right? They were thinking in terms of a connected user flow. Even if
Wow.
when the designer was thinking about it, someone must have created APIs to make that happen, and they have a culture to make sure that these things get done, right? Otherwise, in an organization where engineering is not mature, they would say, hey, you know what, let's ship this out, and then later on we'll figure out, the person can
Yeah.
still go and call a 1-800 number and get that activated.
Mm.
That
Wow.
connected experience and connected ecosystem experience can only happen when the organization is pushing the boundary, writing the right APIs, creating the right data structures to make sure that these experiences are happening.
Wow. That's superb. And what about the unpopular opinion?
I don't know if it is unpopular or not. Right now, I think there's a lot of talk about Gen AI and lot of concerns with Gen AI and large language models too. I'm actually pretty excited about it.
Okay.
The genie's out of the bottle, anyways. The bad actors will do what they will do, but that is no excuse for us to not embrace it, because if we embrace it now, then we can learn more from it and start putting guardrails to it right now. There will be so many amazing use cases that we can think about which can have positive impact. It's really going to change the workflow that we'll have. I don't think it will eliminate the need for designers. I think the way we will use that as a part of our tools, it will be one more, say, arrow in our quiver. But I would encourage highly to designers and design leaders to embrace it. I love to tinker, and I'm like getting so excited about it. I'm just finishing a story which was using all the pictures from Midjourney. I think some 20 years back I was writing a science fiction story which I never
Yeah,
finished, but I'm now
I remember.
using using that to kind of get that going.
Wow.
Trying out Kaggle to see if I can do some data science modeling, and to see what that could be done through that, right? So I think it's an exciting time. So don't just paint doomsday scenarios.
Mm.
I think the more of us,
Well,
if we can get involved, then we can also have a lot more optimistic voices who can help put guardrails to see what positive impacts we can do with AI. I don't know if it is unpopular opinion, but I think maybe
it
this was the
is.
top.
At some level, yeah, I think the most people think of Gen AI in a net negative way. And I think that's true with any kind of disruptive technology. I think people's initial reaction to it is fear. And so what I'm hearing from you, Sarit, is you have a net positive feel about this.
Yeah, no, I think this is really going to make it really interesting. So just to give you an example, earlier this week there are a group of us, and by the way, this is with ex Yahoo engineers and product managers, because the kind of connections that I've made.
Oh,
So
okay.
we go for listening to talks in San Francisco whenever some interesting person or product person is
Mm.
coming, because I think that gives us a chance to learn. So I was listening to Sal Khan from Khan Academy.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
just published a book
Yeah, I saw your
called
LinkedIn post on that. Yeah.
yeah. So one story he shared, which I think stayed with me. So he was talking about that they've created this chatbot called Khan Migo as a part of Khan Academy, and his daughter was playing with that, where she's writing a story with the chatbot. So she speaks one sentence, and the chatbot adds to the story, and they keep
Mm.
on building on it, right?
Oh.
Interesting thing is that the context of the story was about this girl who's a social media influencer. She's stranded on this beautiful island, but she does not have an internet connection, so she can't share with the world what's happening.
That's an
So
interesting
that's the story
predicament.
she's that's the story she's writing, and then sort of she also gives the name to this protagonist, and the opportunity that lies in this technology is that what she said, hey Kanmigo, can I have conversation with Samantha? Samantha was the name of the protagonist, right? And the chatbot says, of course. So this is a character that she's writing
Yeah,
alongside with the AI. Now she can have a
a
conversation with the
conversation. Wow.
protagonist, and how that girl is feeling and her inner feelings, and that helped her build upon the story. That's one thing. And the kind of things that you can do with this, imagine you go back and look at your classics. You can have conversations with the
Oh my
characters in
God.
those stories, and the
Wow.
other kind of use cases that can arrive, right? Where imagine that in a far-flung village where they don't have teachers. So scenario where you don't have teachers versus you have a AI teacher with the guardrails, with the empathy, and the right kind of teaching methodology all built in. I will always pick that versus no teacher, right? Yeah, so
Absolutely.
that's just one scenario, but there could be so many others, right? So anyways, I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is if you switch off the fear mode for a while, you will realize that actually this new technology has the power to solve so many real world problems. Problems of, most of the rural population in India doesn't have access to good teachers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a problem of actually finding qualified human resource. Well, this problem might get solved in the next 5 to 10 years and ensure that everyone has access to a great guide. And that guide will talk to you the way you want based
Yep.
on who you are. I started thinking about that when you said you can have a conversation with anyone. What that does to our mind space. And, if every designer dreams of a creative utopia where there are no limits on your thinking, right? Everything you can
Yep.
imagine can be manifested, and then you work on it. And then
Yep.
I think, yeah, this is kind of paving the way for that. And I think we must approach it with enthusiasm and open-mindedness. And then you said curiosity.
Right. Right. And think about, right, any era that you've seen when amazing amount of creativity has happened, whether it was Renaissance or
Yeah,
in Silicon Valley or the kind of stuff, even what we were doing at HFI, these were because a lot of creative individuals were together and they were having conversation with each other, right?
yeah.
But there are scenarios where you are by yourself. Whom will you have a
Wow.
conversation with? Then you have another person who's bouncing off ideas, and it can
Yeah.
help spark off certain kind of
Yeah.
creativity.
So
Of
it's
course, I'm
like
not
you
saying this is
adding another person into the room to also add to the conversation. It doesn't replace everybody else, but it's just one more person.
exactly.
Sarit, on that note, I'm going to let you go and get some sleep. I think I've filled up this little piece of paper I have in front of me with some amazing epiphanies I've had in this past 60 minutes or so, which is definitely going to change the way I design, the way I think about it, the way I actually do it, the way I consult. And I'm sure that people who watch this episode will not look at design and reading design the same way. So thank you so much for being so open and sharing with us all your secret hacks that you've employed over the years to help pave the way for the next gen of design leaders to go and solve interesting problems and make bigger and bigger impacts in the world. So
Well,
thank you
thank you
so much,
so much.
Sarit, and I look forward to many more episodes with you because there are an endless list of topics that I'd love to talk to you about.
Would love to, and thank you so much for inviting me. And I think I've been seeing the progress that you guys have been making. It's amazing
Thank
to
you,
see
Sarit.
all the accomplishments that you're having, and I look forward to talking to you again. Right?
Thank
It
you,
was a pleasure.
Sarit. And when you're in India, we're going to put you on the real couch.
Absolutely, would love to.
So see you soon.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
Take care.